This next performance is going to be something a little bit different. It's kind of a story about my family, and it's a true story. I told this story one time in Little Rock, Arkansas. This lady came up afterwards and said, "Well, it's quite a story." And I said, "Yeah, and the neat thing about it is a true story." She said, "Yeah, right." She didn't believe it for 1 minute. But anyway, this story was handed down by my grandfather, and it wasn't the Brown side of the family, it was the other side of the family, which they were Hughes, was their name. My great-grandfather handed it down to my grandfather, who handed it down to my mother, who handed it down to me. So it is absolutely a true story. And my great-grandfather's name was Joseph Hughes. He was born in 1827 in Spencer County. And his wife was Lucinda Taylor. I mean, she was the Taylors that Taylorsville was named after in Spencer County. She was born in Spencer County also in 1830. But the incident I'm talking about was the year 1865. And this country was locked up in the most horrible of all wars. Of course, there's not any good wars. But the most horrible of wars, of course, is the Civil War, which pits brother against brother and family against family. And we were in this horrible war. And my great-grandfather, Joseph and Lucinda, they had this horse farm down in Spencer County. And lo and behold, one day this scoundrel, Scalloway, supposed to be a guerrilla for the South, but he was really fighting for himself. He and 12 other people swooped down on my great-grandfather, 13 against 2, quickly overpowered him. He'd ridden all night from either Kansas or Missouri. If you know anything about William C. Quantrill, you know that he burned Lawrence, Kansas, and did a lot of horrible work in Kansas and Missouri. But he also hung out over here in Spencer County, which probably you don't know. And he had ridden all night, and he had at least one friend here in Spencer County we knew about. But he came in and swooped down and overpowered my great-grandfather, took all his horses, and left his old spent horses that he'd been riding for no telling how many days from Missouri. And he got everything except a cookie jar. See, back in those days, no one had any money in banks. They had their money in cookie jars. And Quantrill knew that. And he told my grandfather that if you don't tell me where your cookie jar is, I'm going to hang you. And my grandfather, being the tough fellow that he was, he wouldn't tell him where the cookie jar was. And so he hung him. And then he rode off, and he supposedly had a friend in the county judge in Spencer County, because when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, they drank a toast to his death. We never knew whether the county judge was a friend or was just scared to death. But anyway, that happened. Is anybody here seen my old friend Abraham? Can you tell me where he's gone? Freed a lot of people, but the good they say died young. I just turned around, he was gone. Is anybody here seen my old friend Martin? Can you tell me where he's gone? Freed a lot of people, but the good they say died young. Just turned around, he was gone. Has anybody here seen my old friend John? Can you tell me where he's gone? Freed a lot of people, but the good they say died young. just turned around, he was gone. I didn't tell you all the story. I just told you part of it. There's still some to go. When Joseph wouldn't tell him where the cookie jar was, Lucinda ran in the house, got the cookie jar and handed it to him, and they rode on off. And somehow or other, she was able to cut him down, save his life. And that's one of the reasons I'm singing to you tonight, because my grandfather was born 2 years later, in 1867. And my great-grandfather, he was murdered in 1875. But that's another story. I'll tell that story later. What happened to William C. Quantrell was that he was cornered in a little town called Wakefield in Spencer County. And he was shot by a guy named Edwin Terrell. And Edwin Terrell was supposed to be a double agent for the North and the South. Anyway, he shot Quantrell and he was injured, and they took him to a Louisville Army hospital. And he died there about a month later. But my grandfather knew Edwin Terrell when he got old. And the way he'd pass the time away was, of course he was bedridden, was lying in the bed shooting flies off the ceiling. So that's the kind of guy he was. He's pretty tough. Is anybody here? See my old friend Bobby. Can you tell me where he's gone? Thought I saw him walking up over the hill with Abraham, Martin, and John. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah.